All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Motley Crude, episode 12. Motley Crude, hopefully your favorite Warhammer the Old World podcast, although we'll settle for top three, frankly. Tonight we've got an interesting episode for you guys out there. We have the second part of our two-parter on the Empire Arcane Journal. We'll be discussing the city-state of Nuln Army of Infamy in detail. Tonight, I'm joined by one of my regular co-hosts. That's Ryan. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And we have a special guest host coming on tonight to replace Andrew, who's unavailable. We've talked about him on the podcast previously as part of our local play group here. Danny, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Been busy holidays, but looking forward to talking some Warhammer.
Awesome. Yeah, we're happy to have you on the show. We've talked about you, and we've certainly talked about some of the events that you've run over the last year. So it'll be great for like the listeners out there to get introduced to you.
I'm just excited to be on.
Awesome. Okay, so just a quick intro segment, and then we'll give you, Danny, like an opportunity to talk about yourself from a hobby perspective. But before that, so we're going to be talking tonight, obviously, guys, about the city-state of Nuln in detail. The episode will be structured a lot like our last one was. But before we get to all of that, I'll turn the floor over to Danny to give us a rundown of like, where have you been in the hobby? Like, how long have you been around? How did you get into Warhammer Fantasy? And how have you been doing since the old world has come back? All that kind of stuff. So over to you, man.
All right, so I kind of got into the hobby back in about 2002. So it's been a long journey. It's been over 20 years now. I got kind of tricked into the game itself. When I was in middle school, there was a club that started that was for tabletop gaming. I had no idea what that was. I just thought it was like board games, and it was called the Strategy Club.
Sure.
So I'm like, oh, this will be perfect. I'm going to join this. I'm going to get better at some board games. And then when I showed up, they had like miniatures out, and I was kind of confused because I never heard of like any miniatures games or D&D at the time. So everyone was pretty much given some of those 4th edition, I think it is, Orc and Goblin models from the starter box.
Nice.
Kind of taught how to paint. Kind of had a quick little skirmish game, and since then I've been hooked. I've been into most GW games like over the years, playing Fantasy, 40k, some Horus Heresy, a bit of more time in Necromunda, but mainly it's always been Fantasy. Very much played 40k since Fantasy died way back in, I think it's 2016, 2015.
Yeah, around there. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to always go back to the old game, but Age of Sigmar never really did it for me. I tried multiple times to get into it. I was there when it first launched, didn't really pull me in. So eventually switched over to 40k and played that up until around 2020, and it was about that time during lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was scrolling through Facebook, and I seen someone posting some models on Square Bases, and I was like, oh, I miss those days. And then I'm like, what? I'm like, no one's playing games in person right now. Why don't I just start buying some models? So
Sure.
then I started looking into it and started buying models for some of the stuff I wanted back in the day. So I got really into buying Kislev models. So I have
Nice.
probably like 30 or 40 knights, a bunch of the Corsairs, a couple of the characters, ready to go if they ever come back.
That'll
It was
be
kind of like
that'll
one of my
be
passion projects.
yeah, that'll be really cool when they come back, and you could just pull that right out and be the first guy out of the gate.
I'm just a bit worried that because the old Total War has them kind of displayed a little differently. Like they were very much like always medium cav, never having any heavy cav.
Yeah.
And I know in Total War they have like they kind of switch them up a little bit. But
Yeah,
I'm
they got
sure
like
still
bear
work.
cavalry and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be sick to have the bears running around.
Yes, I'm there for that. Yeah.
Yeah. But lately, since Old World's come out, I kind of jumped in playing. I wanted to do Tomb Kings, and then I guess so did everybody else.
Yeah.
So I took a break and I just kind of shelved them all and just started writing the demons that I had, and been playing them pretty much the non-stop since the game came out, and having a lot of fun because they're very different from every other army that's in the game right now.
Yeah.
Both in comp, the rules, just how they work is a lot different. But
For sure.
lately, I've been trying to slowly collect up some high elves to get ready for their arcane journal when it comes out. Hopefully in the next 2 months or so, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much been my goal. I guess I've also been running events locally, which I always forget about. It's just kind of like before the game came out, I was running 6th edition events, and luckily, Old World kind of it was closer to 6th edition than it was to 8th edition. So for a lot of local people, it's an easy transition to the new game, which is great.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, I've been working with Ryan and Andrew for running events, which has been a lot of fun. Just kind of getting people out, seeing what everyone's been doing.
Yeah.
Good to meet people as well. And that's pretty much been me.
Yeah, you ran our first local GT here back in like what was it, May or
Yeah, there's May.
April?
It was over the May 2-4, close to the May 2-4 weekend.
Nice.
It was the 2 weekends of like 4 events somehow.
Yeah, that's when we decided we need to like have like a little talk with everybody running events to make sure we're not overlapping each other.
Yeah, the schedule was getting kind of wild at that point, but I think we got it under pretty good control now. And then lately you ran like the Highlander event, which we've talked about a few times. How did that go?
It was fun. I actually got to play in it, which
nice.
I'm not the biggest fan of actually playing in my events because I find it a little more stressful.
Okay.
I'd rather just like hang out, check out games. As soon as I start playing, like I feel like I'm not giving 100% to my opponent. Sure. And then I'm also trying to answer questions and organize stuff, so I end up forgetting something. So I prefer just to be on the sidelines for most of the events. I'm there just in case, but yeah.
Fair. I know Andrew's the same when he runs events. When he runs events, he prefers to like sit out.
Just a little easier. Yeah.
And then how has things been going with demons? I know that they're not super popular right now in the world, but I think you've run them to pretty good success.
Yeah, like I've been like the Furies are really good. Like there's a few units I still want to try. I got some Blood Crushers on my table I want to paint up because there's a couple of good builds for those guys, but there's still a lot of stuff's overcosted. At least it feels that way.
Agreed. I was looking at a list I was building lists for fun for Slaanesh demons like yesterday and today. Well, like in some moments where I had nothing else to do, and definitely there's some overcosted units in there. And then I found that like not having access to many or any war gear options, and then not having access to like the big, like all of the magic items that are in the big blue book, like really limits how far you can stretch the units.
Yeah, if you had access to the book, even like in older editions of the book, like in 8th edition, you had access to at least the common magic items, the common magic weapons and banners, but you couldn't take anything else. At least that was something. Then you could take an ogre blade or something. But now it's just no. You got none of the options, and some of the demonic gifts you get are generally overcosted. The big one I think of is like I think it's demonic strength, or there's one for Khorne. And it just gives you +1 attack for 55 points, which is crazy expensive.
Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah, and then I was looking at the Slaanesh ones, and they're almost all garbage, frankly.
There's a couple of good ones. There's one too, I think it gets rid of, your opponent can't use their general's leadership if you're in combat with it.
Yeah, but you need to take a leadership test, though, right?
No, for that one, no.
Oh, no? Okay, all right.
That one just turns off, the unit can't use the Inspiring Presence.
Oh, yeah, okay, fair. Yeah. And the one where you got to do the leadership test to, or else you're always hitting on 6s. That one's not bad.
There's a couple of good ones. Like the general leader, like the turning off the general's leadership. I think it's only like 15 or 20 points, so it's pretty cheap to throw in like a Keeper of Secrets.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Okay, so that's good. Let's use that to roll right into our hobby roundtable for this week. So I'm going to kick it off and throw it to Ryan. How has your hobby been over the last few weeks?
It's been good. I got an old world game on Warhol against our local friend Cleary. It existed. Lovely game, but it was fine. Anyway, I've played 2 games of Infinity during block leave because it got new rules right before vacation started.
Sure.
And then other than that, I've just been building stuff. I converted up a Grail relic and a bunch of battle pilgrims out of some steel helms from Age of Sigmar, and then made a bunch of Knights Errant out of a box of knights that I have, but they're like super exiles peasant knight errants where like they don't even have lances, they just have like peasant pole arms as their as their weapons, and it was a lot of fun. That's it for me.
Yeah, I liked your the Knights Errant. I think they came out super well, super good, and even your Grail Reliquary is actually super cool too. Using like the Age of Sigmar Pope person, whatever, on
Yeah,
the
yeah, Pope
palanquin.
Court.
Yeah. Of the Cult of the Wheel or whatever. Anyways, strange Age of Sigmar stuff. Cool. What about you, Danny? What have you been up to over the last 2 or 3 weeks?
I haven't done too much hobby. Just the holidays kind of keeping me busy.
Sure.
After the Highlander event, I haven't played any games. I've probably should try to get out and play more, but I've just been painting up more demons.
Okay.
I think I got about 24 bloodletters almost painted for a big unit. A BSB Herald almost done.
Yeah.
As well as the Skull Cannon, and then I gotta base them all. Like they're all ready to go for the most part. Like I got Flesh Hounds that I painted probably 6 months ago that just need to be based.
Okay.
But I had in my my bits box was the old I guess it was 8th edition. They came out with like resin banners for warriors you could use, and they were like themed ones. So I'm using one of
Nice.
those for the for my
The Herald.
BSB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. So yeah, on my end, it's been pretty busy despite the holidays being around, obviously. So I got 3 games in since we last spoke. I had one sort of practice game trying out lists against myself in there, but then I played into Wolves of the Sea into Bretonnians, and that was a victory for the Wolves of the Sea. And then I played into, again, a friend of the channel, Cleary, who Ryan played against earlier. I think it was the same list, Ryan.
It was.
A very interesting skew list, very like 8th ed type of army, which is like around 50 Tomb Guard with like something like 6 characters in there, level 4, a Tomb King, and the banner, whatever he's called there, the guy who can catch wounds for the Tomb King, and then 3 Necrotechs. Turns out that the Necrotechs attacks and hatred stacks, so you can increase the output of everybody by like 3 attacks, which is becomes pretty spicy. So that was the list I played into with Cleary. I lost that game, and then I have another game scheduled tomorrow night. I don't know what my opponent's bringing, but yeah, got a game planned for tomorrow. I also made it back to my painting table finally, so I'm super jazzed about that. I am putting the finishing touches on the last few Amazon models in that Mordheim team, that Mordheim Warband. I'm painting up way more than is required for any specific game, but it just gives me options for like WYSIWYGing and stuff. And yeah, so it's just, yeah, I'm just happy to be back painting. Okay. So let's move on to the news. So it wasn't a big news week, unfortunately. I mean, there was 2 Warcom articles that came out. One about the Armies of Infamy, which fine. I mean, now that the book's been entirely leaked, it was a bit of a redundant article, so let's not dwell on that too much. And then there was another article about the lore surrounding the Empire. I thought it was pretty interesting, but like, did anything stand out to you guys on the lore front for where we're sitting at in the Empire in the Old World timeline? Starting with Danny.
I wasn't too familiar with Empire lore. Like I knew there was a civil war going on, and that's about as far as I knew. Like the Civil War, and then pretty much past this, I guess when Magnus shows up is what I'm kind of familiar with.
Yeah.
Anything prior to that, I'm not too familiar with. So it was still an interesting read.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. Ryan, did anything stand out to you before I jump in on what Danny had there?
No, like I just liked the theme they set up of it, where like it's not really the Age of 3 Emperors anymore. It's actually just anarchy. It's like,
yeah,
the Empire are friends when there's people who's not the Empire that they need to fight, and otherwise they're just all out for themselves.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was like you and Danny. I thought we were in the Age of 3 Emperors, and then first story beat we got is we're no longer in the Age of the 3 Emperors, and we're like in the Anarchy. So it's a bit of a like I'm kind of feeling both ways on this, in the sense that I thought I was looking forward to maybe having some themed armies for those 3 different like imperial, let's call them sub empires. But I'm also cool with the anarchy and just people running around doing random stuff, which lets you, from at least from like a theme and creative perspective, like write so many different kinds of armies and take it in so many different directions. So that's also
I,
pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
I think
What was
it'd be
that?
pretty cool. I was gonna say, it seems pretty cool. Like if they ever did come up with those characters, like those sub emperors,
Yeah.
they could have like instead of armies of infamy, like write a whole list for them, just to have
Sure.
rules for like, okay, they can be taken, but they can only be taken in a known list, and then it's a slight variation of that,
Yeah.
or in a Crusaders list, and it's just an alternate version of it, just to make them a little bit more unique as well. If they ever do come up with rules.
Well,
Yeah. I
and
think.
even one of the things they mention in the Armies of Infamy article is that the different regional like warring elector counts or not quite emperors and whatnot
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily look so different as to warrant their own army of infamy. And I think that's just something the community as a whole sometimes needs to like take a breath about, where like, there's what, 10 major cities in the empire at a minimum.
Mhm.
There shouldn't be 10 individual army lists for the empire just because one of them can take a slightly different unit. You just give the Grand Army can already do that. People can self-select into theme in most cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, but I think like there's still enough space to make it cool and interesting. Like you can go and say, for instance, because I think the Margarita of Marienburg is one of like those three different sub emperors or whatever. So
Yeah.
like you could lean into that big mercenary theme for her army of infamy or her whatever like alternate list construction, however you decide to shake that out. And then like we have, I think also there's like the Wolf Emperors of Middenheim. So like you can obviously go big into Ulrich themed stuff for that one, and then do something else for the third one. So, anyways, there's probably options, but like I agree with you, Ryan. And historically speaking, if we base this a little bit on real life, if you have a civil war in a country, those two different parts of the kingdom don't necessarily look that different from like a war fighting perspective. But it's a fantasy world. We can do whatever we want here. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Arcane Journal, and let's talk about the city-state of Nuln. We did this last time, Danny. We talked about like our overall thoughts on the journal and what it brought to the table, but like obviously you weren't there. So, how do you see the Empire Arcane Journal? Do you think like it's on par with the other ones that have been published so far? You think it's a hit? It's a miss? Like, is it thematic? Is it competitive? Like, just your 50,000 feet take on it.
For me, I think it's a great book. Like, both army lists are very thematic, which is a lot of fun for a lot of people. A lot of conversion possibilities, which I'm always happy to see with them. Like, instead of just re-releasing units, have units that require a bit of conversion, like the road wardens that are in one unit. They actually talk about a conversion.
Yeah.
Those things are always really exciting. Competitively, the Nuln list quickly is just like the lack of level 4 is going to be an issue, definitely for a lot of lists. And then the nightly orders, there's so many options, they all can't be great. So there's going to be some that are better than others.
Yeah.
But generally, I think it's a great book. I think it's a lot of fun. It continues the theme that pretty much all books seem to get, which is like a cavalry list and then one other.
Sure.
And I think it's better than the one chaos list there that came out the last book.
Yeah, Heralds of Darkness or whatever.
Which is like I think the first like real bad one, but the rest like these ones are great. Like I can see people running both. Like both look like they'd be a lot of fun to put on the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
And both characters in them look like a lot of fun as well, and look like great models.
Agree. I think we're all in agreement here. That was pretty much our take last episode that we looked at this. One thing that came up sort of in my head while you were talking about this, Danny, is like I kind of wish they would stray away from the each book gets a cavalry army of infamy. Like there's so many different ways you can, like so many different directions you can go on with these armies. Like we could try some more wacky stuff.
I don't even know if maybe they even noticed they're doing it. Maybe it's like two different people wrote a bunch of lists and then came back together like, oh, we have a cavalry in another one. Like they didn't notice the pattern until later.
Yeah, sure. Sure. I think that's probably the case. I think what I'd like to see, at least from my perspective, is more crazy stuff like Troll Horde or Wolves of the Sea. That is just like basically a whole new army.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's so moving on a little bit here. So the way we're going to structure this review is, first of all, we're going to talk about the city state of Nuln and like its entirety. So things like army composition and the specific rules that are attached to that Army of Infamy. Then we'll look at the 5 new unit entries that we have that sort of fit in with Nuln or the general book. So that's going to be General Hans, the Road Wardens, the War Wagons, the Augurs, and then the Harbingers of Doom. And then finally, we'll look at the Nuln-specific magic items. We reviewed most of the magic items last episode, but we left a few out that were sort of linked to this Army of Infamy. So moving straight ahead, let's talk about army composition here. So, first off, like I know you touched on it a little bit, Danny, before, but like I'll turn it over to Ryan now to talk about like what are your general thoughts on the Army of Infamy? You see it like, is it thematic and fun? Like, does it bring something you needed to the table? Does it open up new play styles? That kind of stuff. Like, over to you, Ryan.
So, my personal opinion on this is that the army is very thematic to what it's trying to represent, which is this idea of Nuln being the kind of between Nuln and Altdorf being the like military technological hub of the empire.
Yeah.
So where the Grand Army lets you build your very classical early Renaissance, late medieval army, this lets you build the technologically and tactically advancing next level of that. And we'll get into it in a bit, but like it leverages the regiment, the state troop regiments to like almost force you to play like early 14th century style pike and shot formations, except for the fact they don't have pikes, and you can go down rabbit holes explaining the fact that early pike and shot formations were actually halberd and arquebus. It's a whole thing. Whatever.
Okay.
The Empire does eventually adopt pikes, but not now.
Okay. Sure.
Anyway, so it achieves that theme of fielding that regimental system army in a way that Grand Army doesn't force you to do.
Mhm.
And as well, it has that kind of cosmopolitan, you can include more mercenaries thing going for it. And of course, more guns, and what's known for the College of Engineers and their gun. Or the College of Gunnery and their guns.
Yeah.
The College of
sure.
Engineers somewhere else. So.
Yeah. So I generally agree with you, Ryan, on this one. So I think, like, from a thematic perspective, I fully agree with you. I mean, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes here, but all the individual rules are, I think, super tailored to reinforcing the theme that you talked about, which is sort of the more technologically advanced portion of the empire. And certainly, in the triad of faith, steel, and gunpowder, the gunpowder aspect of it is what I would associate with Nuln, and definitely I think what the army list sells in terms of theme. So I'm all good on that side. In terms of like opening up new play styles, though, I kind of wish that we doubled down a little bit harder on some of the Nuln specific stuff. Like it feels like this army list kind of plays similarly to the Grand Army, but then you're just using unit selections to push the player into like an alternate route. So I kind of, you had the gun line archetype in the Empire before this book came out. I think Nuln plays into the gunline archetype also in a slightly different way than the Grand Army. So it's potentially a much more it's a more mobile gunline for sure that you're probably going to see out of this book. However, it still kind of, for me, fits into that greater play style. So I would have liked a little bit more different differentiation there. But generally, I'm super happy with the theme, and I think it definitely has play. And from a competitive perspective, when I look at this Army of Infamy, I think it's going to be like, it brings less tools to the table, obviously, than the Grand Army, and it's less competitive, I would say, than the Grand Army. But you can definitely still use Nuln, I think, to great effect, and do something really interesting with it at the tables. And I think it's probably got more play in a big, like, competitive environment than the Knightly Orders do writ large. Although, the Knightly Orders is like 5 armies in one, so there's some variation there. But so yeah, overall, I'm really happy with it, and I like the theme. I wish we would diversify the play style a little bit more, and I think it's got play competitively. What about you, Danny?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier too, like the theme is great. Like the idea of a gun line, which has been an Empire staple for years, for many editions. So I think it's great that you get an Army of Infamy based off of one of the main, pretty much, places where you would design a list for. Like Nuln is where the gunnery school is.
Yep.
There are some things I wish they did include in it, but that's besides the point. Like everyone was kind of hoping for the Ironsides and that other unit.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, those guys never got included. The 2 Forge World units, they could have easily been thrown in here. Maybe their
Yep.
future release, but it is very much still like some of the other armies of Infamy, where you can still build them out of the Grand Army. Like, other than losing a couple options, they don't gain too much. But I think the Nuln state troops are a different way of kind of pushing the trope, like the theme of the list.
Agreed. Yeah.
Which I know some people aren't happy about them, but I still think it's really cool to see like a big block of infantry with a couple supporting units on the side. So I'm all for this list. Few things I just kind of wish the list was a little different, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I think for me, you're right, Danny. Like, not having the Nuln Ironsides re-released with this Army of Infamy is a bit strange. I think they would have like been the perfect movement to bring them back. So
They
we'll
could
see.
have been mercenaries for other Empire to use.
Sure, yeah, that would have been perfect. So yeah, interesting that they're not back. So I guess the next step is army composition. The army composition list. Ryan, you wanna read through that for us?
Yes. So you can spend up to 50% of your points on characters, which can include 0 to 1 General of the Empire or 1 Lector of Sigmar per 1,000 points. And that general can also be Mr. Hans Lowenhacke, who we'll be talking about in a little bit.
Yeah.
You can include as many Captains of the Empire, Master Mages, Witch Hunters, Priests of Sigmar, or Empire Engineers as you would like. And you can include 0 to 1 War Altar of Sigmar taken as a mount for Elector of Sigmar. You must spend at least 25% of your points on 1+ regiment of Nuln state troops or Nuln veteran state troops, which will be described in detail later. 0 to 1 unit of Outriders per 1,000 points, and units of Free Company militia and Empire archers. You can have up to 50% of your points spent on special, which can be Empire greatswords, pistoliers, outriders, Empire knights, and war wagons, and 0 to 3 war machines per 1,000 points from a list of great cannons and mortars. In the rare section, up to 25% of your army's points may be spent on Empire Road Wardens, who will be described later, and 0 to 2 war machines chosen from the following list per 1,000 points: Hellblaster volley guns, Hellstorm rocket batteries, and the list includes 0 to 1 Empire steam tank per 1,000 points nested inside the 0 to 2 limit.
Mhm.
But also in like a 2,000 point army, because
can't
the
fit
steam
them.
tank is 265 points.
Yeah.
It's physically impossible to actually get a steam tank, 2 volley guns, and a Hellstorm rocket battery into the list anyway. So that was just I guess they're very concerned about the number of steam tanks you can take at 3,000 points. I
Sure. Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
You may take up to 25% of your army as mercenaries, which is an additional 5% over most other armies, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
And those can be Imperial Ogres and Imperial Dwarfs, or 0 to 2 Doom Seekers per 1,000 points, as along with Badland Ogres and all the other things that just kind of go anywhere. You can take a Captain or an Empire Engineer as your battle standard bearer. And yeah, you get magic items from the usual places you get magic items from.
Perfect.
As to my comments on it, is again, like, even though it's like mechanically terrible, I really love the fact that like you can't take state troops, you have to take the regiments of them, which we'll explain in a bit. I just love that. I also really like the kind of Outriders in core, again, leaning into that early pike and shot supported by dragoons type situation going on. Like all of that structural stuff makes me happy. But at the same time, you really lose out on like a bunch of options. And then you also get some weird interactions, like because you cannot take units of state troops or state missile troops, you can only take regiments. Things like if you chose to take Empire Greatswords, the detachments available to the Greatswords are only Free Company and Archers.
Yeah. Well, archers are decent at least. Yeah.
No, they're fine, but
Yeah.
like I would love to take Empire Greatswords with, supporting handgunners because they're Nuln Greatswords, but you literally can't.
Yeah.
A few other, like, there's some weird, I don't know if they were oversights or just things that the designers kind of looked at, said, okay, this might be a problem, but is it a problem worth solving? No, and moved on. That's it for me.
Yeah. So no, let's move to Danny before I go.
All right. For myself, like the fact that you can't just take like the state missile troops and take like handgunners, just maybe having them like a 0 to 1 or for like every 500 points or 1,000 points to slow it down. I don't know. Seems strange that you can't take just handgunners by themselves. That's one big thing. As well, like I was talking to Kevin before the show, I went and found like the old Empire book from back in the day, which they supposedly based this list off of. The big thing in core for them back in the day was you were able to take cannons and mortars as core.
Nice.
But you had to take units of infantry. So they could have had for every state troop or regiment you took, you could take a cannon, which I thought would have been a really kind of interesting way.
Yeah.
And as well, I was definitely in the train before this list came out, thinking when it kind of got leaked that the steam tank was coming in battalion box, they were going to have them in special, so you can take two. But the fact that they're still stuck to 1 per 2,000 points is rough. So
yeah,
again, like not to do with the list, but like strange that they're preventing you from buying 2 of those boxes.
Yeah. I agree. That was one of the points I was going to bring up. Like, is not being able to take 2 steam tanks in the Nuln Army list is pretty rough. Like, I mean, if Chaos Dwarves can do it,
Not to be the weird fluff contrarian, but there's actually no argument for Nuln having more steam tanks than anyone else because they're produced in Altdorf.
Yeah, they were never made there, but I think it's in one of the Gotrek and Felix books. Like the engineering school had more stationed there.
That's fair.
So I think there was like another one that was there, or a couple. I know there's not supposed to be many, but
even the artillery the artillery train of Nuln list that the design staff claims it was based on literally also just has a limit of 1 steam tank total.
Well, yeah, because back then that was like what you could have. Like the actual list I have here, like it doesn't even have the requirement for halberdiers. Like they're really pushing the halberdiers is still strange to me. I guess it is.
Are you looking at the same thing? Because I'm looking at the White Dwarf article from like 2004.
This is the one from the Army book. from
Okay,
the
no, I'm
2000s.
looking at the article they mentioned in
Oh, okay.
the Warcom thing, and it actually does is like you can have handgunners, but you can't have more handgunners than crossbowmen. You can have halberdiers for every unit of handgunners.
They must have made it like
Um,
expanded version of it, because this is
yeah,
this like back in sixth edition they had just in the back of the book they would have alternate lists you can run,
yeah,
and they must have just actually made a more grandiose, because the steam tank wasn't even in the army book originally either. It had to be
yeah.
added in a white dwarf.
But yeah, it's interesting too because then it's like you can have like 2 cannons for every unit of handgunners,
Nice.
That'd be
Just
great for your core in Old World.
oh,
and then like you can have a mortar for every cannon.
Sure. They're not
that,
great.
that,
It's
that doesn't sound like a fun list.
Yeah,
but you cannot have flagellants. That's the
sure.
Oh
thing you
no.
can't have.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But like maybe from a lore perspective, not having more than one steam tank is not that probable, but regardless, I think from a list differentiation perspective, this being the Army of Infamy where you potentially could have 2 steam tanks would go down the road of making it a
Yeah.
little bit more Nuln specific. And imagine if you could take one of those steam tanks in core, for instance. Let's be crazy here.
Oh,
Like why not? Why not? I
Like
mean, like,
I honestly don't even I wouldn't even have a problem with someone having 2 steam tanks. Like 2 iron demons is already worse than 2 steam tanks.
yes.
And that's a real thing.
yeah,
So,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I guess so on my end, for the army composition, of course having no level 4 mage is ouch in the way that everybody plays the old world right now, so I won't delve too much onto that. We spoke about it last time when we were reviewing the nightly orders. Also, in terms of army composition, I would have been happy to see maybe a new like lord level or general type character brought in, like a master engineer or something, because you're left right now with the Lector of Sigmar, which doesn't super synergize super well with this army, and in general is not that great. And then the general of the Empire, who's basically leadership 9, and then meh, So I think their Lord slots are a little bit subpar here. I'm really happy to see, as Ryan said, Outriders and Core. I think that's great. So when you combine Outriders, 2 units of Outriders with some Empire Archers, I think you've got a perfectly serviceable core. And then you can lean into the Nuln State Troops or Veteran State Troops, as much as you want or don't want. Maybe it's just a cheap tax you've got to bring in core, or maybe you sort of lean into the theme of it. But I think they generally have a serviceable core slot for sure. And yeah, we spoke about the steam tank issue, so I won't reiterate that. And then I like having the engineer as a battle standard bearer. I think it synergizes well with the theme of the army for sure. And then it's going to obviously go well with some of the rules that we'll talk about in a few minutes. So yeah, that's my take on the list overall. Which segues nicely into the rules. So Nuln actually has 6 different specific rules. So we'll cover them like individually before we move on, just because there's quite a few. I'm going to kick off with the first rule. That's big guns, no fear. Basically, what this does is that your Empire engineers in the Army of Infamy and any unit they've joined gain immune to psychology when they're within the command range of the engineer. There is a friendly war machine. So sorry, looking at that one, originally my thought was like I was trying to break this a little bit and see, can I put an engineer in with some big melee unit that I would like to sort of maybe give them immune to psychology and do something with that. And there's just not much, like maybe if you could have White Wolves, Tutagen Guard, that would be great, but you don't have anything like that. I guess your best bet is like Great Swords, which is all right, but it's not really making me really excited here. So I mean, it's an okay rule. It's thematic, but that's about it for me. What about you, Ryan?
so I I immediately dove into regiment detachment because it's my favorite rule in the game that does not work well at all. But regimental psychology actually makes this very interesting on that mandatory unit of state troop regiment that you have to take. So any detachments gain rules like immune to psychology, stubborn, etc. if the regimental unit has it. So you plop your BSB in your big brick of halberdiers. You stick your big guns next to your halberdiers. Now your halberdiers and their 20 handgunner friends are all immune to psych, and there's a banner you can give them to make them all stubborn too. And so when someone at least charges their dragon at you, you're not taking a terror test on like leadership 7 and running away, or leadership 8 or whatever. Those sorts of things. So that's like, again, it doesn't make them good or really fix anything about how ranked infantry works, but it does mean that like with a 45-point engineer and some positioning, you can actually do very interesting things with those regiment units they're forcing you to take.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you lean into like the regimental unit big time, and you have 3 units that are immune to psych and then stubborn with the banner, like that's decent to sort of protect your war machines or whatever. Danny, what's your take on this?
Like the immune psychology, if I'm not mistaken, also prevents you from being able to flee as a charge reaction, right?
Yes.
That's like another downside I see from it. Like it's also a benefit, and like it can be really good if like with the regiments, but losing the ability to flee is also, as a demon player, not being able to use a charge reaction. It's always frustrating. So like I see it as a benefit, but there's still that if you're throwing them in a unit and you don't want them to be charged, you're kind of SOL, just kind of standing there waiting for the charge now. But I guess you prep for yourself for that, for extra combat res and other things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think though, if you're from the get-go knowing that it's going to happen, that you'll be immune to psych and you can't flee, you sort of hopefully plan around it, but it could definitely bite you in the butt.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was muted there. Moving on to the next one. Ryan, why don't you take us through entrenched positions?
Cool. So during deployment, you can quote unquote entrench a single non-character model whose troop type is War Machine for each Empire engineer your army includes. An entrenched War Machine is considered to be behind partial cover and to be defending a low linear obstacle. Should the War Machine move for any reason, to include making a vanguard move, it is no longer entrenched. Again, you're going to take an engineer anyway, so you can make some things be -1 to be hit, which helps. Personally, I do a lot of my War Machine killing with cannons, so this does nothing to protect them from that. But it does mean that, people trying to throw ballistic skill shooting at your cannons or Hellblaster volley guns or whatever will have a harder time. And the low linear obstacle, and anything that's charging your artillery is going to kill it. So
Yeah, exactly. Especially Empire.
not helping.
Yeah, exactly. Danny, what's your take?
So I guess the biggest thing would just be the low linear obstacle would be the better benefit of it, just for the fact it's the difficult terrain when you're charging it. So there's a chance that they could fail the charge. But besides that, I think it's a nice thing to have, but it's definitely not something you're going to rely on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a little bit of cool flavor to bring to the table, but it's not it doesn't really alter the game state that much. I mean, some of these armies of infamies have rules that really shape how you build your army. Like the +1 strength in royal clans for dwarves, for instance, is massive. This is like a cool rule that just gives you a little bit of flavor, and then hopefully helps protect some of your cannons from like wood elf shooting or whatever. So
I'm totally modeling all of my artillery in gun pits, so it's fine.
There you go. So gun limbers, why don't you take this one, Danny?
All right. So gun members, 0 to 1 War Machine per 1,000 points, chosen from the following list, may be given the Vanguard and Veteran special rule. Great Cannon and Mortar are 5 points, Hellblaster Volley Gun 15 points, and Hellstorm Rocket Battery is 10 points. I'm not a big fan of this. The 5 points for the Mortar and Cannon, great. You get your Vanguard. You can move, I think, 4 inches before the game, so you can kind of deploy behind a hill, and then you can move, or maybe you can get a slightly better angle, like after deployment. But I think your opponent's going to know that's going to happen. So, or I guess with a Hellblaster, you can move it forward just to get a first turn shot. So you're deploying on the line and moving 4 inches forward, but it's still like putting the cannon, like the Hellblaster volley gun, in a really bad position. Honestly, and then the veteran rerolling leadership tests. I'm not sure why they need to be taking leadership tests. If something's making it take a leadership test, like a charge, like a terror causer, they're going to be dead anyways. So I don't see the benefit unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on this one. Like I'm not sure it's bringing much to the table. I mean, the only edge case I can think of is just putting your Hellblaster volley guns in a position where they can for sure shoot turn one, but that's about it, really. I'm not a huge fan either. But Ryan, have you seen something that we haven't?
No, I'm in the same boat as like if I would only ever use it on the Hellblaster.
Yeah.
And it would be like I have 30 points and literally nothing to spend it on. Give my 2 Hellblasters volley fire, but that's also in my kind of army archetype I keep looking at where it deploys in marching column and everything's drilled. So instead of fighting in my deployment zone, it's actually fighting at the middle of the table. So you do want the Hellblasters slightly further forward, but like putting it on a cannon is honestly just
A waste of
you're
points.
paying 5 points to be bad at positioning your cannon and band-aiding your mistake. That's
Sure.
the only thing you're paying 5 points for.
It'd be nice if we can redeploy, like it was redeployed before the game started. That'd be great.
Or
Yeah.
if you could tow it with a war wagon.
Yeah, or a steam tank. Yeah, sure. Okay, let's move on to the next one here. I'm going to take a handgun drill. So once per game, each attachment of state missile troops in a city-state of Nuln can fire with 1 additional rank. This one for me is a massive disappointment. I wish we could do it more than once. I don't know why this has to be limited to once per game there. I think it definitely wouldn't break the army or the balance of the game if this could happen more than once. And it would actually give you, I think, a bit more of a reason to take state missile troops, especially as they've like built the detachments for them in Nuln. That would have been like an interesting thing to use. Being able to fire in 2 ranks once a game is great, and it'll sort of double the offensive output of that unit if it's not firing at a large target, like for that 1 turn. But I mean, yeah, I wish we were getting more. We were getting more out of this, but like, cool that it's there. What are your thoughts on this one, guys?
So this rule is proof to me that you probably could take missile troops on their own before they settled on the regiments, because that once per game qualifier seems unnecessary when you have a double the number of model of halberdiers tax on
Yeah.
every handgunner that you want to have.
Exactly. Yeah.
But with that said, leaning into the conceit of the army, it is great. Like I can have my two detachments of 10 handguns, but I don't have to be 10 wide. They can be 5 wide, and then on that go turn when someone charges my halberdiers, I'm getting full shots at them. But yeah.
And I mean, that's definitely the way you want to use them when the halberdiers get charged on that 1 turn. And understanding how the game usually plays out, it's not like you're going to get 5 turns of your state troops firing at an enemy that's not moving up. Like, you're probably going to get 1 turn of long range crappy shooting, and then where you moved also, and then 1 turn of good shooting, and then you're sort of locked in combat. So I mean, it's something you can leverage when it's required type situation for sure. What about you, Danny? What are your thoughts on this one?
I do find it strange, like you guys talked about, like this. It's a once per game thing, and like it also mentions for each detachment of state missile troops. Also, kind of leaning towards the fact that maybe you could take state missile troops before I guess and as well, like if you take a unit of 30 halberdiers, taking a unit of 15 handgunners, and like having 3 ranks to shoot, but it's still like if you're on a hill, I guess I should say,
Yeah.
like you can get a little bit more shots out, but still that's a lot of investment for a once per game ability.
Yeah, of 5 extra shots.
Yeah, which you're already gonna miss with half of them probably.
Yeah, exactly. They're not great quality shots either.
No.
So yeah. Okay, so we've talked about them a bunch. Let's go into the Nuln State Troops rule. Ryan, I'll give you this one to go through. It's pretty long-winded there. Maybe you can sort of sum it up a bit.
Absolutely. So your regiments of state troops, be they normal or veteran, will consist of a regimental unit, your core unit, of either state troops or veteran state troops, just as you find them in Grand Army. Those elements can then be supported by 1 to 2 detachments of any combination of state missile troops or Nuln swordsmen, which I'll explain in a second. So each of the your state troop or veteran state troop block, the regimental unit, must be equipped with halberds, so they can't have spears or just hand weapons. Each detachment of state missile troops must have handguns, so no crossbows. And the swordsman detachment are just state troops with hand weapon and shield. And then, unlike regular detachments, the detachments of a Nuln state troop regiment can include a sergeant at no cost. And as per the article that they were talking about, that sergeant can buy upgrades like they're a normal sergeant, which is neat. So
Cool.
all of that to say, like the minimum entity that you're taking is 10 halberd armed state troops and either 5 sword and shield dudes or 5 handgunners. Now, where it does get a little bit weird synergy wise is like the veteran state troops can take drilled as an upgrade. The missile troops can take drilled as an upgrade. The swordsmen can't be veterans, so they can't get drilled.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of incentives to use swordsmen, but like conceptually, the perfect block is, entity of halberdiers, detachment of handgunners, detachment of swordsmen. Enemy charges you, gunners shoot them, swordsmen countercharge, they disrupt enemy ranks by being more than 5 models in their flank, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, all you're ever going to see is either the halberdiers with 1 detachment as the minimum thing you had to bring in the army,
Yeah.
or the halberdiers with 2 detachments of handgunners, because shooting people more on the way in is better than whatever those swordsmen were going to contribute.
Yeah, and maybe hopefully you win combat on the combat res from the stand and shoot.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. What are your thoughts on this one, Danny?
Yeah, it's just, like I think it's a really cool unit. Like I like how they've taken stuff they already have in the list to make it a little bit more unique for the Army of Infamy. But it is kind of frustrating where you're really tied to like one kind of build for it, like halberdiers as your parent unit, and then 2 units of either handgunners or swordsmen. I think it'd be more interesting if you could have made the regimental unit have different equipment.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I agree with you on this one. I think this rule is let down a little bit by the handgun drill issue from earlier. I mean, you'd probably have more of an incentive to lean into some meaty detachments if you could fire with more of them, more like the individual models in those units. So there is that. I like the theme of this one. It's cool that it forces you to build your list in a different way. I don't think from like a competitive standpoint, these Nuln state troops are great, frankly, but the plus side is I think the minimum, I just priced it out while we were talking, the minimum you can do here is like 100-point unit of 10 halberd state troops and then 5 state missile troops, which fine. I mean, you've got a 100-point tax if you want to lean into other stuff, which is probably not better or worse than most of their armies out there, so like fine. I'm not too fussed by it. I think the theme is great, but then in execution on the table, it's probably going to be a little bit lacking in terms of what you can actually do with it. So yeah, but now, speaking of one that is not lacking in terms of what you could do with it, Danny, why don't you tell us about Veteran Outriders?
All right, this is an exciting one. So, veteran outriders, missile weapons wielded by outriders, including the city-state, included in a city-state of Nuln Army, are not subject to the ponderous special rule. So, no longer getting the -2 to move and shoot; they're just getting the -1, which for them, where their unit that's already got a -1 for shooting multi-shot, and then over half range, not having like a -4 standard is great. So we got it right here. So it's -2. It's normally a -2 for moving and shooting multi-shot. With BS4, you're likely hitting on 6s before you add in the over half range. So if you happen to get within half.
Yeah.
So now hitting on 5s is just generally better. So if you're able to be within that 12 inches, they can do quite a bit. And the rule also doesn't apply to any particular weapon. It's just the unit itself. So if you have the sharpshooter, like the champion in the unit, all their weapons also don't have the ponderous rule. So the big one being the grenade launcher he's able to take, which isn't a multi-shot weapon. It's another benefit. So you only gain the -1 for moving and shooting. And it also does D3 +1 hits. So I'm pretty sure if anyone's taking Outriders in the future, they're just all going to have sharpshooters with the grenade launchers. Just for that D3 +1 hit. So each one is, if they do happen to hit, because the RBS5 for the champion, hitting on normally 2s, 3s for over half range, and 4s for move and shoot. So I think they'll be pretty common in the list. And being able to be taken in core, is it 0 to 1 per 1,000 points? So I think there's probably going to be 2 units in your core every game.
Yeah, 100% agreed on that one for me. I think ponderous is definitely a big limiting factor on outriders as they are right now. I think we've seen in the old world just ranged, like mobile cavalry, be very strong as a unit type. So being able to, A, as you mentioned, take them in core, and then B, shed what is like a pretty limiting rule is going to be super helpful. And I think I agree with you definitely, Danny, that you're going to see 2 units of outriders in any sort of anybody that brings a Nuln list to like a tournament and wants to do well, or even if you just want to lean into the good aspects of this Army of Infamy, you're going to see multiple outriders for sure. I think they're going to be great in this army. What about you, Ryan?
You guys covered it. It's cool. Like they don't have ponderous, so they're going to be hitting on 5s and 6s instead of 7s and terrible. And they've got enough shots that saying something like hitting on 5s doesn't just sound ridiculous. So no, it's definitely a nice benefit. I wish they'd have done something. I mean, they kind of fixed Pistoliers by making a completely different unit, but I wish they'd done something with Pistoliers.
Well, the only thing that they need to do to Pistoliers is remove Impetuous. That's the only thing that'll make them useful.
Yes.
Okay, so now that we've sorry, is there something else?
No, I just had to cough.
Okay. So now that we've talked about these individual rules, why don't, Ryan, you start us off with a bit of like, what's your overall take on how all these rules come together and impact the army?
So yeah, like looking at all of it kind of holistically, I can see a way where you can build like this very kind of defensive, like receives the enemy and then fights around their flanks with your mobile stuff army. The only downside to that is once anything of substance like touches that halberdier brick, I don't care if it's stubborn, it's just going to like evaporate.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. But like all the rules put together definitely encourage you to play the army a certain way if you lean into the trope. However, if you lean away from the trope and just lean into the benefit to, say, Outriders and handgun drill, yeah, you'll be able to do some super annoying stuff that probably visually is a very off brand for the army that they've actually given you to play. But that's kind of a byproduct of theme.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess for me, this is a little disappointing in terms of the impact that these special rules have. I think, there are some armies of infamy that are really built around the special rules that they give you. For instance, I mentioned earlier the Royal Clan is a good example with the extra strength there, which really alters how those units play and buffs them up. Or Wolves of the Sea, which Ryan and I both like a lot, are sort of built around their special rules. Same thing with the if you're looking at knightly orders, the other Army of Infamy in this book, like they really live and die by which order you take and how you leverage the 3 or 4 rules that you get out of that to build your army list. I feel like for Nuln, it's a little bit less about the specific rules because I mean, big guns, no fear, entrenched position, gun limbers are more or less like have no impact on your game. Handgun drill is nice for getting an extra 5, 6, 7 shots on the one turn. Great. And then non-state troops competitively is maybe even more of a liability than an asset, frankly. So, you're really relying on veteran outriders to build the army list, which is a bit disappointing. I think this is an Army of Infamy that like leans heavily on unit choices rather than the actual rules that come with it. So I'm not super hot on this slate of rules. But yeah, what are
Can
you?
I
What are your?
interject?
Yeah,
Can I
yeah,
just
yeah,
interject a point before we get to Danny on that? Just
yeah.
because I've had this discussion in a couple different forums, and it's like I totally agree with you that from the ability to compete with this Army of Infamy, you can't play the army to its theme and play it competitively the way the old world the game exists right now. But at the same time, disappointment aside, that doesn't mean that it has failed to give us a thematic army option. It's just that if you lean into the conceit of it and build the thematic army, the army is bad.
Yeah. And like my point wasn't that it wasn't thematic. I think we all agree that it is. I just wish that the rules had given you like you'd get a little bit more out of those 6 rules that sort of determined your army construction and took it in a different way than the Grand Army and potentially gave you more tools, right? More things that you can lean on. So, a good
But at what
example.
point is
Yeah.
it not just super grand army? Like, because
No.
grand army already builds gun line.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you just buff into that conceit, you're just making an army of infamy that is super grand army.
No, but so I guess my point, Ryan, is more that, let's say you take the rules that are there, for instance, gun limber, and then you give it what you guys have talked about earlier in terms of like, it can let you move like your war wagons and steam tanks can also move that artillery around later on in the game. Or, if handgun drill is usable all games, or if you can build your non-state troops also have an attendant artillery piece with them. That moves you in a different direction than the Grand Army. And I think just reinforces how central those rules are to building the Army of Infamy. My point is not that
Yeah.
it's suboptimal competitively. I don't think that's the goal of the Armies of Infamy. It's more that like I wish the rules were more impactful as they are in others.
And that's fair. I guess what I'm getting at is like, if you build an army that is consciously trying to use all of the rules they gave you, you will build a thematic army.
Yes.
You-
Yeah.
you- but the problem is that when you put the how do I win games hat on, we all reach the conclusion I can ignore 2/3 of these rules because they don't actually help me do anything. And I agree that's a problem, but it's like it's just, and it's not you specifically I was responding to, it's just I've had this conversation in a bunch of different places where I find there's a bit of a breakdown between like utility and theme that
Agreed. Yeah.
the community is getting tripped up on.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole, Ryan, but like definitely for me, I think that's because we've been conditioned through Age of Sigmar and 40K, where your book, the Codex, rewrites the army and hopefully makes it more competitive or more, playable or whatever, increases the power level. Whereas
Yeah.
we're living in a completely different paradigm in the old world, and I think we
No,
need to come
and
to
like
terms with that.
my background's more in historicals, which
Yeah.
might be why my wiring's a little different. But
Yeah, but no, you raise a good point, and I also think that potentially like people aren't seeing the army journals, like the journals of infamy, for what they're worth. But yeah, I think Danny, we've spoken at length. Like, what's your take on the rules as
Yeah,
a whole?
I'll keep it brief, but for me, like all the rules together, like as you guys mentioned, like a lot of them you can ignore if you're playing a competitive list. Like you're not gonna ever entrench your war machines because it's not gonna do anything. The gun limber, you're probably not paying points for veteran, which to me is still a null rule.
Yeah.
But like I think what they were trying to build with this list is just something that's like defensive. Like you get your big guns, no fear. You put your engineer in your state regiment to pass that immunopsychology. So you get that bonus. You have the entrenched positions, so you're having all your war machines entrenched because you have a bunch of engineers, and then you're paying for these veterans. So it's supposed to be maybe if a unit runs away, nothing's running. So it's going to hold, but
Mhm.
it's competitively like no one's going to be paying for those. I guess even a fun list you could, but
Yeah.
I think that fails. Like the rules kind of just fail to create.
Yeah, the right incentive to build that
Yeah,
way.
to build that way.
Yeah, and I think like I appreciate like what you brought up earlier, Ryan, with layering on stubborn and immune to psych on what is realistically like 3 units worth of models to sort of stabilize that gun line and try to be more defensive. But I'd have to see it like in person, because there's going to be some like battlefield geometry realities to this, where because your guns aren't large targets, they can't see over the 3 units in front of them. So you better hope you have a hill in your deployment zone to be able to sort of layer on all these rules in a way that's useful. Because otherwise you're probably going to block yourself out from shooting quite frequently. But I think thematically, like, it works super well to tell a story, though.
I also haven't seen anyone really use regiment or detachments yet. Like other than like someone's trying the game out for the first time, like I haven't seen anyone use detachments.
Yeah, so at the very least, you're right. We will all learn the detachment rules through this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
I
let's
just want to
transition.
build an empire army out of spite.
No, I sound pretty negative, but I like the army list in general and stuff. Yeah. Anyways, you guys have heard me, but I am overall positive on this army, and I think there's play there, despite what I said. So this takes us to new units. So I think I will kick off with a unit that I particularly like, and that's the Empire Road Wardens. So what you're getting for 18 points a model is basically skirmishing light cav. Essentially, they're weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 4, and then the human stat line of strength, toughness, and initiative 3, with obviously 1 wound and 1 attack apiece. Leadership 7. I think what's interesting with these guys is so they're in units of 4+. They come with crossbows and heavy armor, but you can exchange the crossbows for a brace of pistols for a point of model. And then after that, you can give them what I think is the holy trinity of skirmishing cavalry rules, which is feigned flight, fire and flee, and skirmish, obviously, together. Just gives you a really, really mobile piece that you can sort of move around the board and harass stuff with. I think it's a unit that the Empire kind of needed, and which will help you just put some pressure on the enemy, even if you're sort of being a little bit more of a gunline type army build. Looking at how you build this unit out, I was thinking about it. So I think you definitely want to go brace of pistols over the crossbows. The crossbows still have, was it ponderous? Like you're still taking a -2 for moving, and you don't want that on your skirmish cav. And then it's only 1 shot apiece, so you got 5 crossbow shots, which is it's not great. At least the brace of pistols, you're getting 10 shots. So you're able to maneuver around the enemy using skirmishing and that like great movement speed. Then unload 10 shots. If you get shot, if you get charged, sorry, you stand and shoot and flee, and then do another 10 shots. So you're looking at putting 20 shots and 20 high quality shots, a ballistic skill 4, into anybody before you potentially get charged. So yeah, I think they've got value. I like them a lot. I was looking at the points, and we've if you've listened to stuff online about this army, they've been touted as being quite expensive. I kind of agree, but I also don't think they're like prohibitively expensive. So you're looking at about 80 points for a min-sized unit, which is fine for what it'll do. Frankly, and then when you look at some of the other, I play Chaos Dwarfs, for instance. My Hobgoblin Wolf Riders are like 12 points a pop, but they're lower ballistic skill and they have shittier weapons. So yeah, I think these are actually pretty decent, frankly. What are your and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw them in both this army list for sure, and then in the greater army overall. What are your thoughts, Danny?
Yeah, they're just better pistoliers for start. Like
Yeah,
I think there's 3 extra points for this unit with the pistols.
yeah.
You lose the impetuous, you get extra ballistic skill, which is also something that's amazing. So they're BS4 instead of BS3. I don't know if pistoliers can get faint flight, but I mean, losing the impetuous, like that's the thing that was holding pistoliers from being like usable. So
Yeah.
they don't just run off in combat and die.
Yep.
So yeah, and I don't think anyone ever would run the crossbows. Just the -2 to move and shoot is terrible.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think, Danny, like you're onto something here. Actually, I don't even see a use case for pistoliers at all anymore with these guys combined with Outriders.
Well, the fact
especially.
that they aren't locked to the list, they can be taken in a Grand Army.
Yeah, exactly.
In a 0-1
In a
special
better
insert.
spot.
Yeah, they're in special instead of rare.
Yeah. So no, I think these guys are great. I'm a big thumbs up for me. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Oh no, I totally agree. They're like my mounted yeoman, but with guns and better armor, and with the same armor. But anyway, it's no, you shove them up someone's face and you play the nice I sit at your maximum charge range and
Unload
shoot
pistols.
you and run away. But
Yeah.
it's the feigned flight that's key. Like that is when you're only leadership 7, fire and flee is not as cool as you think it is. When you
It's
just
a
keep
dangerous prospect.
fleeing. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're all pro road wardens. That's cool. I keep
100%.
wanting to call them fucking road warriors, but road wardens. So let's move on to the next one. Danny, why don't you take us through war wagons?
War wagons. 2 pages for the war wagon. Here we go. So they come in at a whopping 140 points, which is, I think, a steal for what it is. Big thing is movement 7, strength toughness 5, 6 wounds. It's got 6 crew members on it, which are all just human stats. There's 3s across the board, 1 attack each. It's got leadership 8, and then 2 horses pulling it. It's got a 3+ armor save. The crew itself have an assortment of weapons that I'll get into after. It's just so many different. Everyone just comes with their own unique weapon, which makes things very fluid. For special rules, you got close order, crushing weight, impact hits d6 + 1, which it is a heavy chariot, so those impact hits are at -2. They did actually just notice that they do say the impact hits are only for the war wagon, which is something they've started changing.
Yes. After the fact, yeah.
Yes, after models and models.
Yeah.
It's a large target, stable platform, firing platform, and it's got some stomp attacks as well, d3 + 1. So crushing weight.
But those aren't limited to the war wagon.
Yeah, that's just everybody. Also, really strong crew members.
Yeah.
Big feat with them. But their stomp attacks by the war wagon have armor piercing -1. In addition, unlike other chariots, this model treats low linear obstacles as dangerous terrain rather than impossible. So it's able to stomp into everything at AP -1, which is great. So even behemoths, it's still -1, which is different. And then able to actually get past the low linear obstacles if they are on the table. Next is the stable firing platform. to reflect the stability of a war wagon, any missile weapons carried by the crew can be used in the shooting phase, even if the war wagon marched this turn. So I'm assuming this just means they move, so there's still -1 to hit, but you can still shoot. And I'm not sure if any of these are ponderous. So there's just -1 to shoot.
Yeah.
Which is nice for the few weapons that are on there. Next is all the different weapons. So assorted weapons. In addition to the hand weapons, each member of the War Wagon's crew is armed differently, with each carrying one of the following 6 unique weapons: blunderbuss, a long rifle, repeating rifle, ball and chain, hooked halberd, and man catcher. During the shooting phase, each member of the crew with a missile weapon may shoot with that weapon. During the combat phase, each member of the crew may choose to use one of the unique weapons or use their hand weapon. In both cases, the controlling player must roll differently, or roll different batches of dice for each of the different weapons and make it clear to your opponent. Pretty much just saying, just to make things complicated. But the first one here is the blunderbuss. It's a range of 12, strength 3, AP -1, multiple shots D3 with volley fire. Model armed with a blunderbuss suffers no negative modifiers for firing at long range, for using multiple shot D3 special rule, or whilst doing a stand and shoot. So you're pretty much just always being on your bliss skill. The long rifle, range 36, strength 4, AP -1, armor bane 1, and cumbersome. A model armed with a long rifle can target a specific model within a target unit, such as a champion or a character. I just find it strange that they're driving around on a war wagon and have someone trying to fire and aim a sniper rifle, pretty much. Just not seem intuitive at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you already got an engineer doing that off the top of the steam tank.
Yeah. Yes. I just always think of movies with like guys in helicopters trying to fire a sniper rifle. I'm like, I don't know how you can hit anything while flying in that helicopter.
You can't.
No, you're obviously not, because like I had a hard enough time shooting standing still.
Yeah, fair.
Next we got the repeating rifle, which is a range of 24, strength 4, AP -1, armor bane 1, multiple shots 3. So I think it's the same thing that the Outriders have, except no ponderous on it. They just removed it.
Yeah.
Then we got
It's the same with the long. It's just the Hochland long rifle without
okay.
ponderous.
Okay.
Yeah.
They just slightly changed the names so that they're not confused. Then we have the combat weapons here. So we got the ball and chain, which is strength +3, AP 2, armor bane 1, requires 2 hands, and strikes last. It's, I guess, a better great weapon. It's +3 strength, so it'd be strength 6 with 1 of your attacks. You got the hooked halberd, which is the strength +1, -2 AP, armor bane 2, and requires 2 hands. So it's a halberd. And then the man catcher is strength user, AP -1, and then killing blow requires 2 hands. So it's a lot of rules. It's like the fact that you have to roll each dice individually is very frustrating, when I feel like most of the time none of these are going to come up. Like I feel like I would, to speed up the game, depending on what it is, only ever roll the man catcher for the killing blow if it's going to matter. If you're into ogres, otherwise just you have 5 or 6 strength 3 attacks.
Yeah. Call them all hand weapons and just get it done.
Speed it up. Like I don't, unless you're into something where you think those are going to be beneficial.
Sure.
I do wish that the rule was just like they have this assortment of weapons, so everyone could, maybe for combat, they could all use the ball and chain, or all of them could use hooked halberds. Maybe not 6 long rifles for range, because I think that would be silly. But I know the model is 6 guys with all their own unique weapons, so that's kind of why they went with this. But the other thing that's beneficial about it is any army using the Empire Man Grand Army composition may include 0 to 1 war wagons as a rare choice for 1,000 points, and your engineers can be mounted on it. So in the Army of Nuln, you could put an engineer on top and make him a BSB.
Yep.
And have a nice 18-inch command range with that banner, because he is a large target. I'm not sure what banner you'd use. Maybe just a war banner for the extra combat res.
There's actually some cool Empire ones. I mean, they're all terrible, but there's
Different banner, right?
Yeah. No, not that.
Yeah,
The stubborn
I-
banner. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that's only
That
the
wouldn't
unit,
do
right? Yeah.
anything. Yeah, it would just make it stubborn. But no,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
give me a second. There is one that would be relevant, but keep going. We'll circle back to
yeah,
it.
yeah. I
Um,
think like it's a lot of fun. Like to have it's a really strong unit. Like compared to other heavy chariots, like 140 points for something with 6 wounds versus the usual 4 for a lot of them is
Yep.
great. Like it is good value. Like I understand the crew's not good, but it's got D6 plus 1 impact hits. It's got the stomps. So being able to do both of those things, like you still have something you can do in combat because it's still D3 plus 1, strength 5, AP minus 1 attacks for the stomps that are hitting.
Yeah.
So if it's supporting a charge, it's going to do a lot of work, and that's
Agreed.
before any buffs, any throw an engineer with maybe some magic items that could benefit would be great.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. Sorry, what's that, Ryan?
Give it a 5-up ward save.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, then it's even tankier. The 6 wounds at yeah. I think
Yeah.
you'll definitely see it, even if it's like turns out not to be as strong as the people are making out to be. People love the model from way back in the day. Like this came out and retired before I ever got into the game. So I only ever seen it, and I thought it looked ridiculous back in the day. Just a giant tower being pulled by 2 poor horses.
Yeah.
So like the fact it came back is hilarious.
At least the horses are in HD now.
Yes, they're the newer ones that are slightly larger. That look like they can actually pull something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, Ryan. What are your thoughts on this guy?
So I think it's cool. I don't care for it as a game piece, or like it doesn't synergize with anything I would ever do with an Empire army. It doesn't mean it's probably not going to work for someone.
Sure.
I just don't care. Like it's just a lot of stuff that doesn't really go with it. Like you're basically just taking it for a bunch of impact hits
Exactly.
and hopefully not dying to 2 cannon shots. But I will say this: if you want to stick an Empire Engineer BSB on it, give them the Imperial banner. Now everybody within 18 inches rolls 3d6, discarding the highest when they take fear, panic, or terror.
That's good. That's decent.
Yeah.
How expensive is that banner?
60 points.
Okay, so well, it's pricey, but if it's on most of your army, then maybe. Yeah.
But like that's a way better benefit for 60 points than the like 70, 75 point this one unit ignores leadership modifiers banners.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm a fan of this unit. I actually like it quite a bit. I love that the model's back. I'm happy that it exists and that it's a thing you can buy and put in your Empire army. For sure. I like how it looks. I'm happy that they redesigned it or remade it in more sort of a modern style. I think the assortment of weapons thing is frankly just a big pain in the butt when you're playing it. It slows down the game, and it's like much ado for nothing. So I would definitely, I think, play it as Danny suggested, just a bunch of hand weapons and call it a day, because you're taking this guy for the impact hits, frankly, and maybe the stomps. So yeah, I think it's a good set of rules for 140 points. I mean, it's basically you get 2 of those for the price of a steam tank, and I think I'd still take a steam tank over 2 of those, but like at least it's a discussion I'd have, and so that means that they're pointed in a pretty, I think, fine way for what they're bringing to the table. And I really like that you can make a kind of I've dubbed it the Hell on Wheels list with this, where you take 3 war wagons, 3 engineers on war wagons, a steam tank, and an altar of Sigmar to have like chariots, the army, and empire, which is probably not very good, but at least it's going to be very fun to bring to the table, and people will remember that game for sure. But like jokes and meme lists aside, I think it's a perfectly serviceable unit in a competitive or like any kind of setting that you're bringing it to. I think the D6 +1 impact hits on the charge is going to be fantastic. The stomp attacks, when you add those on with a bunch of regular dude attacks, is also going to do a surprising amount of work for 140 points. Like, you're going to get more offensive output out of this than your 10 Empire Halberdiers and five gunners for 100 points. So there's that. And I think most importantly of all, it brings something different to the Empire army list, where, there's not a lot of good options in the Empire for counterpunch units. So you can build stuff to withstand a punch for sure. You have some decent cavalry that can make those charges, but there's really not a lot of sort of beefy delivering the impact hits, being able to do some damage on the counterpunch and close combat units in this list. So I kind of like it for that purpose, just opening up your list design and what you could do with the army. So yeah, I think that covers the war wagon in detail. Let's move on to one of my favorites in my heart. Maybe you won't see it on the table very much, but definitely something I like the idea of. Ryan, Imperial Ogres.
Yes. So Imperial Ogres are a mercenary unit available to Empire of Man and Dwarf Mountain Holds armies. And so they're typical ogre stat line: movement 6, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 4, toughness 4, 3 wounds, initiative 2, 3 attacks, leadership 7. They come in at 31 points a model, which is beefy. And they can have an ogre captain who gets, what is he?
An extra attack.
He gets an extra attack and extra ballistic skill.
Sure.
For 7 points. So you can have a ballistic skill 4 ogre. He is the greatest marksman of all of his
Of his
species.
kind, yeah.
So they come in units of a minimum of 3 and come stock with a hand weapon and light armor. And are baked in with Armor Bane 1, Close Order, Fear, Impact Hits 1, Mercenaries, Motley Crew, and Ogre Charge. So all of those things are neat. Any model can, and they have Motley Crew, so people can take different things, but any model can have a great weapon for 4 points, a Morning Star for 2 points, a light cannon for 8 points, or an Ogre Pistol for 5 points. And you can replace light armor with heavy armor for 3 points a model. There's definitely some interesting things. You can just make like really shitty dragon ogres
Yeah.
that are mercenaries. It's fine. Ogre Charge does the same thing it does everywhere else, where if you actually have enough ogres to have a rank bonus, you improve the AP value of your impact hit by the rank bonus. The light cannon, 18-inch range, strength 4, AP -1, armor bane 2. On a successful to hit roll, when firing, it does D3 hits to the target unit instead of 1. So that's neat. And despite being a cannon, it doesn't have ponderous or cumbersome or any of the other negatively impacting shooting rules that exist.
Yeah.
And the Ogre Pistol, 24-inch range, outranges the cannon. Strength 4, AP -1, Armor Bane 1, and Quick Shot. So all of that is just a very cool package. There's certainly some fun things you can do if you want to cram these guys into the mercenary slot of your army. Like heavy armor and Morning Stars. Keep them in light armor, give them cannon, or give them heavy armor and cannons. Great weapons if you really want to, though, like toughness 4 and heavy armor is not as protective as a lot of people hope it would be.
No,
But,
yeah.
But no, like they're cool. I will certainly, if I ever build an Empire army, find a way to include them. Probably with Morning Stars, because I just love the idea of ogres with giant maces, just body
Just
slamming
enforcers.
people at
Yeah.
5. What do you guys think?
I'm a big fan. As I mentioned there in the lead-in, I love that these exist as an option you could bring in your Empire army, and hilariously in a Dwarf army too, for whatever reason. Like the hobbyist in me just loves the conversion potential of taking, for instance, like the GW ogres, which are basically just a blank slate of like a fat naked dude that you could do whatever you want with, and just convert it up to have like poofy pants, and which it already kind of has, but and a fedora with some big feathers on it, toting around, like you said, Ryan, a massive Morning Star, or like a two-hander like the Great Swordsman, or lugging around some baby cannon. Like it's just fun, whimsical, super narrative thematic stuff that you could bring to the table, and I'm there for it. Um, I think it's hilarious that GW continues with the tradition, the new, I guess, old world tradition of just shitting on ogre kingdoms by having all the ogres outside of the ogre kingdoms list be better than the actual ogres, and that's in this case largely due to the weapon options. I mean, the light cannon is, I think, a serviceable ranged weapon. It's certainly better than what the lead belchers are packing on the ogre side. Although it becomes kind of a pricey unit for 9 ballistic skill shots, but regardless. And I think the most important one here is the option for great weapons. I think when you're talking a min-sized unit of like, going to come out around roughly 100 points, that's bringing 9 strength 6 attacks. Like those guys, they can do work. Strength 6 is such a big breakpoint in this game. I think and they're pretty wounds dense, obviously, being ogres, so they're like they can take some punishment. I know their armor save, as Ryan pointed out, is subpar, but at least you're packing some wounds that somebody's going to have to chew through on a toughness 4 frame. So I like them. I'm not sure they're not great competitively, but I'm still a fan. I like the idea. We'll talk about him later there, but with Hans, who's sort of geared towards mercenaries, having a unit of these guys as like his enforcers that run around with him is, I think, a super cool narrative trope. So I'm going to stop there. I like them, but what do you think, Danny?
I'm also a fan of them. I know you mentioned like converting these guys up. I've definitely seen some third-party models. Like they've been around for a while. People making
Oh yeah,
like the I can't remember what the outfit's called, like the puffy sleeve ogres. Like there's tons of those models around like for years. And like the fact that the Empire is now going kind of back from just the Empire man to the Empire where they had other races in it. I know there's one race that they never included, which I'm very surprised because they did have models.
I
But
know,
like
man.
having the ogres
I know.
back, having the dwarves back in the book, we're just missing one.
I know. Don't bring it up. It's like a sore point
Yeah.
for me.
I was surprised you can't take a banner with these guys, which is surprising.
Yeah.
You can just take a champion. Because I was just comparing Badland ogres to these ones. There's a few differences like in points cost. Because I was like, oh, it would be kind of cool to include Imperial ogres with the banner access to Empire banners, like to have
Yeah.
the Empire banners. But then I realized you can't take a banner with these guys. Just surprising.
Yeah.
That's one downside. So I guess they're really meant to be either a counterpunch, like a minimum unit, or you're taking them for the light cannons, which are almost 40 points a model for the light cannons. Which I think you'd want your champion cause with the extra skill 2 with that as well. They're a fun unit, I think, to play, but I competitively also I don't know if you'd see them. But
Yeah, maybe as an edge case of like 3 with great weapons on a flank somewhere to hold it down for 100 points. I don't hate even in a competitive setting. You're just you're gonna run out of points, and they're always going to be close to the chopping block.
yeah, true.
Okay, let's move on. Danny, why don't you take us for the short journey on the next one? That is the Harbinger of Doom.
Harbinger Doom. Let me just find him on here because he's not in the same spot. Harbinger.
Sure. Yeah.
Doom. Harbinger. Yeah. He's movement 4, weapon skill 5, bliss skill 2. Got no shooting anyways. Strength toughness 4, 2 wounds, 4 initiative, 3 attacks, leadership 8. Coming in at 65 points and just comes with a hand weapon. His options are either a flail or a great weapon. Flail being 3 and a great weapon being 4. And he may purchase items up to 50 points. For special rules, he has Feel No Pain, which comes from the Empire book. For your Furious Charge, immunity to psychology, impetuous, hatred, prayer of the damned, and unbreakable in Zealot. The first thing I noticed off the bat was, I shall cover it in here, the prayer of the damned. So prayer of the damned is during the command subphase of their turn, the character may attempt to chant the prayer of the damned by making a leadership test using their own leadership. If this is passed until the start of your next phase, this character and any unit they have joined gains a 6+ ward save for any wounds suffered, and, as well as a 5+ ward save against any wounds suffered caused in combat by an enemy with a fear or terror special rule. And the other rule he has as well is Zealot. A character with a special rule can join a unit that with the Fanatical Zeal special rule, pretty much allowing him to join the Flagellants. But the Prayer of the Damned and Feel No Pain kind of overlap. Both give a 6+ ward save against any wound suffered. Prayer of the Damned is against fear and terror, and the other one is almost like the Blessing of the Lady, where it's strength 5 and above, you have a 5+ ward save. So it seems strange that there's kind of this overlap between the two special rules that don't need.
It's non-magical attacks for Feel No
Oh,
Pain.
okay. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
for the Feel No Pain. Okay, so this one's a little different.
Yeah.
So against characters, against those dragons, and you have a big unit of flagellants, you'll be good.
Yes, exactly.
Or my peasants and their magical arrows.
Yes,
Sure.
yeah.
What else?
But having that against, if you're fighting that dragon with your flagellants, you'll finally have a 5+ ward to tarp it, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
But
For an extra turn, hopefully.
I originally, when I saw this guy, I thought, perfect. You can add a character to the flagellants who can take magic items. I haven't looked at the magic items yet, but then when I went and read flagellants, realizing that you could already take characters in the unit.
Yeah,
you can take Priest of Sigmar in the unit who already have access to magic items. So it's not like you can add anything new. Yeah, and he can't join other units because he's unbreakable. Otherwise, I would say 100% throw him in a different unit for the Prayer of the Damned, but unable to do that. So he's kind of stuck either on him by himself or in a unit of flagellants. And being, I think, 65 points, he's pretty pricey, I think, for what he is. So I don't think he's great. He's cool. They finally, he has a model with the Forge Roll kit. There's a character command.
Yep.
So it's sweet that he has a model. It's a great looking model. But I don't see people, unless they're building a very much Flagellant, Sigmar kind of themed list, you're probably not going to see too much of them.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
What about you guys?
Ryan?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. He's a cool model, and I will always be here for, models with obscene religious zeal to the point of stupidity.
Yes.
But I don't know what I would do with him, because I'm looking at this and it's the amount of overlapping prayer interactions you would need. You take your flagellants and you put the Priest of Sigmar in there and him, and you're just taking all these leadership checks just to have these super conditional ward saves in a whole bunch of different circumstances.
Brutal.
If this guy added, not to cut in, but if he added or got rid of Impetuous on his unit, that would be something. But the flagellants still have Impetuous.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, he just has worse frenzy because he has Impetuous and Furious Charge.
Yes.
Which is just a really crappy way of being this is frenzy, but bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have much to say about this guy. Cool, he exists, and that's basically it. I mean, there's overlap on his one cool ability. No, not a lot of people are taking flagellants as it is. I don't think you'll see flagellants anymore with this guy being around. I agree that he's a little bit on the pricey side for giving your award. Essentially, make on an 8+ leadership test, making your award save also apply to magic weapons is, for 65 points, I'm not totally sold on, frankly. So I mean, he's cool, he's thematic. I'm happy that he's here, but I'm probably not taking him. Is sort of my take on this.
You could just cast Earthen Ramparts on the unit with a wizard.
Exactly. Like there's
They
other
would hate.
options.
They would hate the wizard. They would be filled with self-loathing for benefiting
Yes.
from it.
Yeah. The Ring of Tal on a Sigmar priest in there or whatever, like there's options.
The ring of power on this guy.
Yeah. Fun. For when you fail that leadership test. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on. Let's talk, Ryan, about your homie, General Hans von Löwenhake.
Yes. So he is a general of the Empire. He's got sweet movement 4, weapon skill 6, ballistic skill 5, strength and toughness 4, 3 wounds, initiative 4, attacks 4, leadership 9, and he costs 190 points, which is like a pretty decent price point for a tooled up Empire general. He's got a hand weapon, full plate armor, and his hammer, which is named Judgment, and the Griffin helm. Special rules: he has Hold the Line, Mercenary Commander, Rallying Cry, Strategic Mastery, and he just comes with Stubborn, furthering my theory that he is 2/3 dwarf. So, Mercenary Commander. If Hans is the army's general, friendly units with the Mercenary special rule may benefit from his Inspiring Presence rule and may be joined by him. In addition, friendly mercenary units are not subject to misbehaving mercenaries. So overall, that's neat. Strategic Mastery. In a scenario where players roll off to determine who takes the first turn, you may apply a plus or -1 modifier to the result of your roll. And then on to the Griffin Helm. He has a 5-up ward against any wound suffered and is immune to Killing Blow. And much like all the other Empire immunity to Killing Blow, if he is struck by a Killing Blow, he is still allowed to take armor and regen saves as normal. And if the wound is failed, if the wound is unsaved, he only loses a single wound. So, for whatever reason, Empire is really good at not getting Killing Blowed. And then Judgment, his close combat weapon, strength +2, AP -2, magical attacks, multiple wounds 2. It's just this is honestly the profile that I think all great weapons should have been. But anyway.
As long as
So-
they upped in point value.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or if normal ones kept strikes last. But
Sure.
I just feel like questing knights, if they were multi-wound too, maybe wouldn't suck.
Yeah.
But on back to him. So Mercenary Commander lets him do some very interesting things. Well, actually, the only thing it really lets him do is join a unit of Imperial Dwarves. Because you can't join Doomseekers, and he can't join either of the Ogre units because of Monstrous Infantry's, whatever the rule is. Clumsy or whatever?
Yeah, clumsy, yes.
Yeah, so, but those ogres can be leadership 9, which is nice. But basically, this just lets him take a bodyguard of, sweet dwarves with handguns or spears or something, or great weapons.
Sure.
Just to, hang out and look cool. Like, that's what he's here for. But strategic mastery is what really matters. So, barring some sort of situation where either the Bretonians prey at you and you go first anyway, or a warrior's duel where one of your state troop sergeants gets savagely murdered by some Norskin guy. Yeah. You're going to get a plus or -1 to the modifier. And, if you're taking the Nuln army and you spent half your points on war machines that are 1 drop, you might actually, be able to have a +2 to that go first roll, which is cool. And then, he's got a great defensive profile. He's toughness 4 with full plate. He doesn't have a shield, though. So he only has a 4-up armor save. But he's got a 4-up armor save and a 5-up ward, and you can't tag him with Killing Blow. But he's still susceptible to multiple wounds, interestingly enough. Yeah. So, if someone comes at him with, an Ogre Blade, or if he just has bad luck against a Giant Blade or anything like that, he will still die very quickly. So he's definitely not a, go out there and fight people character, but he's not also just going to, fold as soon as someone gets near him.
Yep, agreed. So, Yeah, on my end, I don't hate him. I think he's decent, and he brings some really cool design space to the army, specifically in Nuln. Like uh, changing the mercenaries rule there to make it less punishing, I think is cool and opens a new thematic way to approach building that list, which I like. And I think in the context of Nuln specifically, where you're essentially forced to take an Empire general as your army general, he's like a great side grade to that. He's 100 points more expensive, of course, but once you factor in items and stuff, it's a lot less than that. But and he's bringing cool stuff to the table for that extra 100 points. So yeah, I like him in general. I think he's also, as you mentioned, Ryan, he's fairly competent in combat, way more than a regular Empire general. So there's that. But I really like as you mentioned, the +/-1 to go in first rule there, strategic mastery. I think if you take this guy, it's really to lean into this. So you either go really big with a gun line, and then you can leverage that to get a reliable, I think, +2 on the roll, which means that you're outright winning half the time, and then you're dependent on your opponent's roll the other half, which I think is better than most other bonuses to this kind of stuff. So I think he has play. Probably the Empire General overall is probably still a little bit more competitive, but I wouldn't look at you funny for bringing this guy along. What are your thoughts, Danny?
For this guy, like he's great. I guess the +1/-1 is like the big takeaway from him, like being able to choose to go for, like, pretty much being able to get a better chance of going first.
Yeah.
If they ever do come up with a player pack where there's holding objectives or something at the end of the game, having the -1 could also apply. Like wanting to go second could be a way to go. Like, because I don't believe he has to be taken in any of the lists here.
Agreed.
So then just taking a Grand Army with him in the army, because he also doesn't have to be the general to get that benefit. So I believe you could take another general of the Empire and have him as the general with all the special upgrades to kind of change how you play your list, and maybe a more aggressive list versus a stand and shoot one.
You can, yeah.
But that's to be seen still, because he is on foot, so he's not really moving too fast. That's like the big thing for me. Is just he is pretty durable with the 5+ ward and immune to killing blow. But as you guys have mentioned, if anything has multi-damage, he's going to fall to pieces because he's just 4+ save.
Yeah.
And if anything's doing multiple damage, it's probably already getting rid of his armor save, so he's just going to have a 5+ ward. So I could see him being in a unit and giving them stubborn, and then having the +1/-1. But for 190 points, that's a lot for your list. So
Agreed.
Overall, really cool model and cool rules, and you'll definitely see them on the table. People are going to have them.
Yep, and even just as like an alternate Empire General model that you can use, he's really cool. Yep. And then, as you mentioned, Danny, I didn't really touch on the -1, but I think that also could be situationally pretty decent when you're talking about who's going first or second. Even if you do pack a gun line and you show up, and on the other side of the board there's a really slow army, like you're playing into dwarves or chaos
and
dwarves,
they deploy outside of range.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You get them to move up one turn by giving them the first turn, and then you can have some more high quality shooting after. So I just like the flexibility of it.
Yeah, it's not just a flat +1 to go first, it's a plus or -1. So you can put them in different types of lists and get the benefit different ways.
Yep, agreed. For sure, agreed. Okay, so let's move, wrapping up the unit section. Like, what are your standouts in terms of units? What do you think you'll see competitively, and what are sort of the disappointments in terms of either these units or other stuff not showing up, starting with Danny?
I guess the big fun for me is Road Wardens. They're really cool. Like, it's just what Pistolier should have been. They are pricey. I guess if you give them all the upgrades, they're like 22 points a model. So a unit of 5 of them's 110 points. But I think they're going to be worth it. And the other one, of course, the other big one is the War Wagon itself. People love this unit. It's going to be on tables. As soon as this thing's released, it's probably going to sell out right away. And definitely because it comes with that really cool engineer with the sniper on top. I guess you can model on top or on foot. So those two are the biggest ones for me as the positive note. The disappointments, I guess, the ogres are okay. The harbinger is probably the biggest one. Like, he doesn't really do much that the warrior priests, the other characters that were joining the unit, weren't already doing. So he's not adding much to the list. If he had some other cool rules, like able to join, didn't have the unbreakable rule, and was able to join other units, I think he'd be a lot of fun. That'd be my biggest disappointment. He's just kind of there, doesn't do much.
Agreed. Yeah. On my end, I think so I guess if I had to sort of rank them in terms of how often or you'd see them on the table or how like competitively playable these units are, I think Road Wardens, as you mentioned, Danny, and War Wagons are bringing something to the table, and you'll see them in events near you in the future. I think if people are bringing Empire armies, I think then Hands kind of falls in like sort of a middle ground of, you may see him, but you have to sort of lean into him and make sure you bring him for a good purpose. He's not for me as much of an don't want to say auto take, but like as an obvious pick as for instance the Road Wardens are, and then like in the sort of lower tier you'd have ogres and doom seekers. Dooms, like the harbinger of doom there, who are like thematic, but you're probably frankly not going to see much of. So there's a pretty decent spread. If you get nothing out of the book except for the fact that you could take a few cool items, some Road Wardens and a War Wagon along with your Empire, and then a Knightly Order in your Grand Army, like you are well ahead of where you were a few weeks ago from like an Empire player's perspective. So I'm super happy about that. I guess in terms of disappointments for the Nuln Army specifically, not bringing back Nuln Ironsides is like a big missed opportunity, I think. Blades of Manon, I think would have been another cool unit to bring back. And then having no master engineer or like lord/general level character for Nuln is, I think, a bit of a missed opportunity too, especially because I think they're putting out like 6 different engineer models at this point. So it would have been a pretty easy thing to do to just write up a few rules for a master engineer there. So generally, I'm happy. There's good options in here, and I'm happy that it's bringing back a number of new units. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, you guys really hit it, all of it. Like, Road Wardens are just cool. General Hans, also a lot of fun, cool looking model. And yeah, the Harbinger of Doom feels like someone started writing a Sigmar themed Army of Infamy and then gave up on it, but
Yeah,
was like, well, we need rules for this model we're bringing back, so
yeah,
he's
yeah,
going in here.
yeah. It was 2:00 on a Friday when they asked him to design these rules.
Yeah. But that's all I got.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the 3 different items that we have that are specifically tied to Nuln before we wrap the episode up. So, Danny, can you work us through Von Trickshot's Wondrous Arquebus?
Yes, the Wondrous Arquebus. It's 25 points, magic weapon. It's a ranged weapon at 36 inches, strength 5, AP 2, and it's got armor bane 1 and multiple wounds D3. Von Trickshot's Wondrous Arquebus may only be taken by a model in a city-state of Nuln Army of Infamy, and the wielder does not suffer a -1 modifier for shooting at long range. Big thing with this, it's pretty much like almost a mini cannon, strength 5, AP 2, and multiple wounds D3. It's pretty good. I feel like they wanted you to take that on engineers, but a captain has better ballistic skill than an engineer. I believe they're ballistic skill 5. So like I feel like you're gonna put that on a captain, which is already like a pretty decent choice in hitting on 2s at all times.
Yeah.
And to like some smaller monsters wounding on 5s to do D3 wounds is, I think, gonna be pretty good.
Yep.
Yep.
And with a unit
see
of a unit of either Outriders or Road Wardens would be pretty decent. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
I think it's a good weapon. Like 25 points is reasonable because when you look at some of the other items that the engineers can take, like their long rifles and stuff, and the pigeon bombs and everything, they're already pretty expensive. So I feel like this is worth it. It might not be in every list, but I can see people taking it for sure. So it'd just be fun to use.
Yeah, agreed. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, like it's a great profile on a very cool weapon. I'm gonna get into this later when I talk about a different item, but the only thing I run into is the like, where do you put him? Because yes, it's a great thought. Oh, stick it on a captain, put him with your outriders or whatever. But now those outriders have Vanguard built into them that you're not using because you spent 25 points to give this captain a gun, and those outriders are now stuck in your deployment zone at the start of the game. So like there's a lot of like weird anti-synergy in some of this. But at the same time, just having a solo captain or yes, they're only ballistic skill 4, but having a solo engineer just sitting in your deployment zone, sniping people 36 inches away, being in full cover because he's near a war machine isn't a terrible idea.
Yeah, or on a stable firing platform on top of the war wagon.
Also
Just
a
driving
thing.
around, yeah.
Yeah, not
Yep.
bad. Just gives a little bit of extra punch to that model. I don't hate it. I think it's for 25 points. Like I'm a buyer on this item. I think it's a decent weapon. It packs a pretty good profile. It's not too expensive. Like we'll need to work through where exactly you put it in the list, but I don't hate it compared to some of the other weapons we've reviewed in some of these arcane journals. This is perfectly serviceable. I think you're going to see it. You're going to see it in lists for sure. I think I'll go to the next one, which is the banner of the Free State of Nuln. Let me just scroll down here. So the banner of the Free State of Nuln may only be taken by a model in the Army of Infamy, of course. A unit carrying this banner gains the Stubborn special rule for 20 points. I like it. Stubborn for 20 points is great. Isn't there a common magic banner that's like 50 points for Stubborn? Iron Resolve
Correct.
or something? Yeah, so this is a huge discount on that item, which at 50 points are probably not taking. But at 20 points, if you have a big unit that you want sticking around, if you want to lean into the detachment stuff that we discussed before, I think that's the obvious place to put it. It's just a bit unfortunate that there's nobody in the army, like there's not a lot of units in the Nuln Army of Infamy anyways that you'd want sort of sticking around and fighting it out over multiple turns, or that are able to do it really well. So I guess you're going to have a hard time fitting it on something, but in a vacuum, I think this is a good banner. Moving on to, what are your thoughts on this one, Danny?
Yeah, just the fact that it's a 20-point banner, like it's discounted price, it's great. Like I'm sure because you're forced to take that one unit of veteran state troops, you're going to be putting this banner on them probably automatically, or I guess maybe a war banner, but I see it like in every list. It's going to be there. I see no downside to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, so 20 points for something that costs everyone else 50 is great, but it's also really funny looking through the list. And aside from putting on a BSB who then has like some go sit with this unit and make them stubborn for whatever reason,
Yeah.
the only thing that you can put it on that doesn't already have some other way of being stubborn is that regimental unit of state troops. Because great swords can buy stubborn, Empire Knights can buy stubborn. Your your pistoliers and outriders, you would have to go like buy a captain, make him a BSB, put him on a horse, put him with them, and then I'm like, why are your outriders in combat?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna go on that regiment, and for 20 points, you're making not one but 3 units stubborn.
Exactly. Yeah, and then when you factor in stubborn and champions, and suddenly each of those units can hold up a dragon on the charge for like at least 2, probably 3 rounds of combat. So
Exactly.
and that's not something the Empire does very well. So that's good. Awesome. So moving on to the next one, Ryan Squintoffin's Marvelous Magnifier.
Yes. So Squintoffin's Marvelous Magnifier is 35 points. It's also a common magic item, so you could take it more than once. It may be taken only in models in a city state of Nuln Army of Infamy. The bearer of the magnifier in any unit that they have joined does not suffer the usual -1 hit to hit modifier when shooting at long range. So I'm just going to go back to my weird anti-synergy point here, where super cool on an Empire engineer with a Hochland long rifle who's just hanging out in your deployment zone being a sniper. But I spent a bunch of time exploring the idea of like, well, what if I put this on a captain? Put the captain with the outriders
Yeah.
and all these other things. But again, then it's like, okay, the outriders are paying for Vanguard that you're now not using, so the captain can get rid of their to hit modifier that they could have ignored by just being closer to the target anyway because of Vanguard. And same thing with and like any of your pistol arms stuff all has quick shot, so it's not taking a -1 modifier. And then on top of that, say you give that captain a handgun, his handgun is still ponderous.
Yeah.
And is not a repeating handgun. So it's one of those, like, it looks really cool, but the actual best use case I can find for it is an engineer on his own with a long rifle. Because the other thing you don't want to do is attach that engineer or whoever to a detachment unit. So it's okay, my handgunners can now shoot at long range with no penalty. But being a detachment has a whole bunch of like downside baggage to it where you don't really want to add a character into it because there's nothing's going to save that unit when it gets tagged and overrun and now you're 80-point engineer or whatever is dying over just having a -1 to hit modifier.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's a bit rough to find where to place him again. I guess it's kind of the problem that I had with the banner from earlier. That being said, yeah, potentially the lone sniper guy, but you're taking a 35-point item on a guy that's worth like 45 points to remove one -1 to shoot at long range, which probably a bit too much of an investment for the amount of output you're going to get out of him. I agree with you that running around with cavalry, well, he actually can't be mounted, so you have to buy a captain and then give him a 35-point item, etc. So you're probably doubling the price of those outriders. So at that point, just take 2 units of outriders or world wardens, frankly. The only place I would sort of put this is maybe on the war wagon. You have your BSB engineer pushing out that you roll 3 dice during terror check aura, and just making everybody on the wagon sort of shoot a little bit better, I guess is a thing. But aside from that, it's probably you're gonna have a hard time fitting it in. But I like, again, in a vacuum, I like this item. I think again, in a vacuum, the city state of Nuln has 3 pretty decent usable items, actually, which is leagues ahead of where a lot of army lists are. What are your thoughts on this one, Danny?
For me, I was just looking at the points. So, like, to run the Empire Engineer with the long rifle in it, it's like 90 points. So you're spending an extra 10 points on top of this for the long rifle, which, like, I feel like I just wouldn't take an engineer at 90 points. Like, I guess if you're running an engineer, like, I'd rather keep him just without anything at that point. If he's going to be
Sure.
on himself, because like I feel like this item, you want him in a unit, you want him to be given that ignoring the -1 to a unit. And the only thing I can still think about is just the outriders, which again, you're trading off the Vanguard to get this.
Yeah, or maybe
Archer.
then,
Put him with archers.
Sure.
Oh boy, I don't know why. I still
Hey,
wouldn't do
do you
that
know
either.
do you know how many things I've killed with 10 peasant bowmen?
Sure.
Yes, they're more just like no one wants to touch them, but then they just keep poking damage through. But if you put a character with those archers, people are going to want to like now deal with that unit. So
Sure.
like, and it is also a very common magic item, so you can take multiples of it. But like, I still think you didn't need that multiples unless you're running 2 captains with 2 large unit of outriders, like 2 units of 10 outriders with 2 captains each. but then it's just a really weird, like it's very much like a lot of points. You're probably spending 200 points on each of these units of Outriders.
I guess my point is
Yeah,
it's a trap.
Yeah,
it is.
100%.
It is. Because
But-
if you do that, Danny, you're looking at like 200 points
yeah.
for the units of Outriders,
Plus
200
another
points
80.
for the two. Yeah. So so you're basically looking at 600 points of your army. And then like, yeah, it's a decent combo, but it's going to be so matchup dependent, and you're going to
Yeah.
hit some
Oh,
matchups
100%.
where, like, let's say that you put 600 points into those two units, and then you run into Wood Elves, and then
Yeah.
those two units get killed like turn one.
Oh, 100%. And it doesn't matter where you are on the board.
You run into 3 Pegasus Knights with the Banner of Chalon, who just
Yeah, and you're not standing
ignore. Just like, oh, cool, no stand and shoot, I kill you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like it is a cool item. But
Yeah.
if it was available to all Empire and not just the Nuln list, where you can't take a large unit of handgunners, because then if they had all those other rules where you could have stand a shot with multiple ranks, like a big unit of 20, just say big unit of 20 handgunners, ignoring that long range penalty, might be useful. But because you're only doing that once, it's only on a detachment. Like I don't think you're going to take it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. So just closing out our Empire review. The Army of Infamy review there. Now that we've talked about it at length, starting with Ryan, do you think that there's competitive play for the city-state of Nuln overall?
So I think you can do some cool stuff, but I think it fundamentally has not solved the core problems of Empire Grand Army, like state troop heavy Grand Army. So, like, yes, I think a very savvy player could probably play it competitively, but that's one of those, like, their skill exceeds the utility of the things they're using.
Fair.
I rate it basically equal to a state troop Grand Army.
Really? Okay. What about you, Danny?
For myself, like I think the list as a whole, like I'm sure there are some competitive builds that right off the bat, like throwing together a bunch of like the Hell on Wheels, all the war wagons and a steam tank, it's gonna catch people off guard, and it's gonna be just a skew list. So it's gonna be like throwing people off guard, but the regiments, like the Nuln state troops, like it's still something where you're forced to take something that no matter how you shake it, it's still not great. Like you're still stuck with infantry who are not great in the game right now. I think the extra points in mercenaries is fun. Like I think it's gonna be more a fun build currently until maybe something else pops up. But I guess you can either build it like the two ways, either like the Outriders as your big push, mobile shooting, doing lots of that, or trying to build that stationary list, or even the Hell on Wheels. But I don't know if it's competitive, but it's definitely worth playing compared to that other chaos list. I always forget the name, the Herald's list, or that list. Like I don't see the benefit of doing it other than that one unit entry. This one, like there's a reason to take it, like for like the Outriders being just better. So if you like Outriders, you're probably going to play this list over your Grand Army.
Yeah, agreed. I think I'm a little bit hotter on it than Ryan is for sure. I think you can do something with the Nuln army list in a competitive setting. I really believe that a decent player could go 3-2 or 4-1 at a GT with this army list, which is sort of the bar that I set for if it's playable competitively. Your army is probably not going to look exactly like it has been envisioned here with big blocks of detachments of non-state troops, but between Outriders buffed up Outriders and core, between the war machines that come with the Empire, between the addition of road wardens and war wagons, I think you can definitely do something here from a competitive standpoint. Yes, the Grand Army will just brings more to the table, and I would rate the Grand Army again, as I mentioned earlier, over this one from a purely competitive standpoint. But I still think it has play. Like it's not as rough of a go as some of the other armies of infamy that we've seen. It's not a huge step down from the Grand Army, and you are bringing a pretty significant amount of theme and additional tools to the table, which I don't hate. So I think it's fine from a competitive standpoint. I think it's a bit higher than the knightly orders are, just because this build leans into the Empire's strengths a little bit more. But yeah, so overall, I'm pretty positive on this. Any last minute points on how we rate the city state of Null?
My only other caveat too would be that my opinion's also heavily shaped by the fact that everyone's still insisting on using rule of 3, for example. So like, it's great that I can take 6 cannons, except I can't take 6 cannons. So like that shapes how my opinion of this looks.
Yeah, you're right. I think that is, and we discussed it last episode. The rule of 3, I think, hits the Empire probably harder than a lot of other armies. But all that being said, I still think between what I mentioned earlier, there's enough good units around here that you could still do something with this.
Oh, absolutely. All I'm saying is it's definitely held back by the
100%.
common comp conceits that are being used right now.
100%. Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap this one up. If you're listening to this close to the new year, Happy New Year to everybody out there. Good luck next year with everything hobby related and everything you've got going on. I'm going to thanks to Danny for participating today and helping us out. It was great to have you on, man. We really appreciate it. And we'll reinvite you in the future for sure. Our next episode, listeners out there, Andrew should be back. We should be doing a sort of new year, new hobby, more hobby focused episode next. Before we close out, Ryan, is there anything you want to shout out or talk about?
No, we've got, not too many events coming up, but big things to mention is Can Hammer Team Tournament is having an old world portion to it. And the event pack for that should be finalized shortly. I have to get it to Andrew next week. And that is the first weekend of May. So people should definitely consider, developing teams and looking at that if they're interested in coming out to Ottawa and experiencing that event.
And Danny should be on my team for this, so I'm pretty excited actually.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah. I'm just gonna help Andrew keep things organized because I'm busy at the time.
It's all good. It's all good. We are we're taking some of the heavy hitters in Ottawa. It should be a pretty interesting run. Danny,
2 teams from Toronto, so
great. I'm all there for it. Let's do it. Danny, I did have one question because somebody asked me, Danny, recently. When are the CTC tickets going for sale?
That we're still working on. Waiting for the organizer to get back to me about the event. I think there's some changes with the venue, so I don't want to say anything yet about it, but still waiting to try to find what's going on with that. I'm still waiting to hear back as well.
Okay.
So once I know, I can pass it on to you guys, and then you can pass it on to whoever's been asking questions. But I'll also post it on our Facebook group.
Perfect. Danny, anything you want to shout out?
Not currently. I'm hoping to run some more events in the new year. It's been very hectic last couple months. So after I guess the S-Spot in Toronto, I kind of had a hiatus until the Highlander event, and since then I've just been in like Christmas mode. It's just been Christmas and then New Year's and daughter's birthday all kind of crammed in like a week and a half. So it's just been no time for anything else. So hopefully now that the New Year's here, I'm gonna start playing some more events and hopefully get some more stuff going locally here. So look forward to all that.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to some local tournaments in the new year for sure. All right. Perfect. So thank you, listeners, for having joined us tonight, and we are looking forward to seeing you next episode. Thank you, and have a good one.